The 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar is the most highly anticipated tournament in soccer, or football, which I'll use for the rest of the video, is coming up very soon. So, I decided to take a moment to look back on the history of this tournament, specifically the first FIFA World Cup, held in Uruguay in 1930. Before the FIFA World Cup was actually a thing, the most popular world football tournaments would be those of the Olympics. But FIFA was ambitious. When FIFA was founded in 1904, they set out to be the primary authority and moderator of international football. At first they started out organizing the football matches for the Olympics, but then they said, you know what? We need our own thing, our own tournament, organized only by us. And so, plans for the first ever FIFA World Cup were underway. And it was to take place in 1930, and the South American football champion of the 1928 Olympics, Uruguay, was selected as the host nation. Now, the way this World Cup was organized is barely recognizable from what we have today. See, today we have preliminary tournaments like the World Cup qualifiers to decide who gets to play. But not here. FIFA chose the participants based on whether or not they accepted the invitation. Now, their goal was to have 16 teams play, but only 13 actually ended up joining, a far cry from the 32 teams that will play in Qatar. So who were these 13 countries that played? Well, Uruguay was hosting, so they obviously had to play, and many South American countries, who were closer to Uruguay, were also happy to play. And these were Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, and Peru. Mexico and the United States also accepted the invitation. But wait a moment, that's only 9 countries. And also, hold on, isn't this a world football tournament? Where are the Europeans? The problem is, this is 1930, and the world economy was all in a jumble because of the Great Depression. So many European football teams that were invited weren't really too keen on sending their players halfway across the globe to play a little football. Thankfully, Jules Rimet, the president of FIFA, was able to convince 4 European countries to participate, and these were France, Belgium, Romania, and Yugoslavia. And these additions bring us to 13 teams, and they were to be divided into 4 groups. The teams made their way to the Uruguayan capital of Montevideo, where all the matches would be played. And the Europeans, of course, had the longest journey, crossing the Atlantic by sea over the course of 2 weeks. On the 13th of July, 1930, the first FIFA World Cup had begun. Now, because of the odd number, one group had 4 teams, and the other 3 would have 3 teams each. And only one team from each group was to advance to the knockout stage. Group 1 was made up of Argentina, Chile, France, and Mexico. Now, normally the opening game of a World Cup would be played by the host nation, but not this time. The first game actually kicked off at the same time as another one. France versus Mexico and USA versus Belgium, but we'll talk about that one later. The first goal of the game, and thus the first goal in a World Cup, was scored by French forward Lucien Laurent, and according to him, it was snowing during the game. The match ended in a strong 4-1 victory for France. The next game was Argentina versus France. Now, early in the game, Lucien Laurent came face to face with Luis Monti, a ruthless and rugged Argentine midfielder. And as Laurent tried to dribble past him, Luis Monti tackled him and injured Laurent, who limped for the rest of the game. And around the 20th minute, French goalkeeper Alex Tepeau started feeling pains. But despite everything, France was able to block all of Argentina's attacks until the end of the game, when Luis Monti struck again, successfully scoring a free kick. And to top it all off, the referee accidentally ended the game 6 minutes early, so the match had to be set up again in order to finish the game, which was a 1-0 victory for Argentina. Chile versus Mexico resulted in a 3-0 victory for Chile, partly thanks to a Mexican own goal scored by Manuel Rosas. France's game against Chile saw some good resistance by the French goalkeeper Alex Tepeau, but Chile was able to score a goal in the 67th minute, ending the game in a 1-0 victory for Chile. When Argentina played Mexico, Argentina's original captain, Manuel Ferreira, had to temporarily leave because he had to take his law exam, and this ended up allowing another Argentine player to take center stage, Guillermo Stabile. He went wild in this game, and he scored 3 goals, achieving a hat-trick. The game was intense, and it ended with 6 goals for Argentina and 3 for Mexico. The final match of the group would be between Chile and Argentina, two teams that had both done very well. Guillermo Stabile opened the scoring with 2 rapid-fire goals scored in the 12th and 13th minutes. This was followed 3 minutes later by a response from Chile's Guillermo Subiabre. Now, in the second half, Mario Evaristo scored a goal, securing Argentina's victory. Now, during this match, Luis Monti again got rowdy, and his shenanigans resulted in police having to come onto the field to restore order. But when all was said and done, with a 3-1 victory over Chile, Argentina advanced to the semifinals. Now, Group 2 consisted of Brazil, Yugoslavia, and Bolivia. Brazil was expected to win easily over Yugoslavia, but the problem was their team was made up of a lot of fresh players, and the team hadn't played in a complete international match for 5 years. So the match ended in an upset victory for the strong Yugoslav team, with 2 Yugoslav goals in the first half and 1 Brazilian goal in the second half, scored by Breguinho, who, in addition to football, also played basketball, volleyball, and water polo. In their match against Yugoslavia, Bolivia decided to honor the host nation by spelling out the words Viva Uruguay on the team's jerseys. Anyway, they got clapped, and Yugoslavia scored 4 goals, 2 of them being scored by Ivan Beck. Now, with 2 strong victories, it was clear that Yugoslavia would be the one to advance out of the group, and so Brazil just decided to start experimenting with their lineup, casually beating Bolivia 4-0. Group 3 consisted of the host nation Uruguay, Romania, and Peru. Romania versus Peru was pretty much a disaster for Peru. Their goalkeeper, Juan Valdivieso, was playing in his first international game, and in the first minute of the match, he conceded a powerful 30-yard Romanian goal from Adalbert Deșu. And during the second half, a fight broke out. Romanian player Adalbert Steiner broke his leg, and Peruvian player Placido Galindo was ejected from the game with a red card. And this led to a situation where Peru had to play a man down. And the game ended in a 3-1 victory for Romania. The best part is, only 300 spectators were watching in the stadium. Having recently won the 1928 Olympics, the Uruguayan team was made up of several Olympic champions, but they did have to replace their goalkeeper Andres Massali because he left the team's training camp to go visit his wife. What a simp! Anyway, Uruguay, the host nation, was now going to play their first World Cup match against Peru. And the first Uruguayan goal was scored by the one-handed Hector Castro, who was missing his right hand because he accidentally chopped it off when he was 13. And the game ended just like that, a mellow 1-0 victory against Peru. Now the team was kind of disappointed by the fact that they only scored 1 goal, but after some regrouping, Uruguay played much better against Romania, crushing them 4-0, and Uruguay comfortably advanced to the knockout stage. Group 4 consisted of the US, Paraguay, and Belgium. Now the US played their first game against Belgium. The issue here was that Belgium was home to Raymond Brain, a very talented player. But, unfortunately for Belgium, he wasn't playing in the World Cup, so too bad, so sad, USA wins 3-0. In the next game, the US faced the formidable Paraguay. Now despite Paraguay's ability at the time, the US also beat them 3-0, with a hat trick for the 20-year-old Bertrand Patnaud. This was partly due to the fact that it was pretty windy during the game, and the Paraguayan goalkeeper, Modesto Denis, was injured during the game. Paraguay beat Belgium 1-0, but it didn't really matter because the US was in a perfect position to advance. Now, it's at this stage where the 1930 World Cup really gets interesting. So, because there were only 4 groups and 1 team advancing per group, it was a small bracket. So first, it was the USA versus Argentina. Now this game exposed a major skill gap between the 2 teams. American player Rafael Tracy injured his knee in the 19th minute, so the US had to play a man down. And 1 minute later, our good friend Luis Monti scored a goal. And after that, 5 more Argentine goals were scored over the course of the game, 2 of them coming from Guillermo Stabile. and it was brutal. The Americans were exhausted, and Argentina was basically running circles around them. Allegedly, during the game, a trainer working for the American team walked onto the field and was angry at the referee, and he threw his back on the ground in a fit of rage, breaking open a bottle of chloroform, which kind of messed with his brain, and he had to be carried off the field. But not before one of the American players, Andy Ald, was close enough to smell it, and was temporarily blinded during the game, according to the manager. And in the final minutes of the game, James Brown scored the USA's only goal, finishing the game at a crushing 6-1 victory for Argentina. Now, despite the youthful spirit of Yugoslavia, and the fact that they were the ones who scored the first goal, the strong Uruguayan team quickly recovered and ended up scoring 6 goals, with José Sea scoring a hat-trick. The third and fourth goals, scored by Juan Anselmo and Victoriano Iriarte, were called into question by the Yugoslav team, but they ultimately stayed. And like the previous match, the score ended at a strong 6-1 Uruguayan victory. The 1930 FIFA World Cup final was wild, to say the least, and it's pretty much the sole reason I wanted to make this video. Now, Uruguay had beaten Argentina in the 1928 Olympics, so this match was seen as an opportunity for Argentina to make it even. And as Argentine fans traveled from Buenos Aires to Montevideo to attend the match, they chanted victory or death. And so many Argentines arrived at Montevideo by boat that the port was stalled, and many of the fans didn't even make it to the stadium by the time the match began. Now, before the final, Argentina for some reason replaced their very skilled goalkeeper, Angel Bocio, with Juan Botasso. And adding to the controversy, neither country could agree on who should manufacture the ball that was to be used, since obviously they didn't trust each other. And in the end, they decided to use an Argentine ball for the first half and an Uruguayan ball for the second. I'm not sure why they didn't just use a third-party manufacturer, but whatever. And next up on the list of controversies, the death threats. So yeah, several death threats were sent towards Luis Monti, but he still went on ahead and played in the final, despite the danger. And the referee, a Belgian man named John Langenus, reluctantly accepted the role of being referee, as he was also worried for his safety leading up to the most tense match of the tournament. In fact, John actually requested that a ship be ready to take him away at all times in the event that he had to escape. So, with 93,000 people watching in the stadium, every one of them having been searched for weapons before entering, the first ever FIFA World Cup final match had begun. In the 12th minute, Pablo Dorado scored Uruguay's first goal, and Argentina responded 8 minutes later with an equalizer from Carlos Peusele. And Argentina continued their offense with another goal, this time from Guillermo Stabile, putting Argentina in the lead. Now, although Argentina had been coming on strong in the first half, when halftime ended, Uruguay channeled their inner anime power. They reflected on that time when they were little, and all the kids picked on them, and how they were all alone with no one, and they climbed to the top all by themselves. Were they really going to fail here, where it mattered the most? No, they said. They were going to win. And when the second half began, it seemed like the Argentine team had been cursed. Francisco Barallo's knee flared up in pain. Luis Monti, who would normally be out tackling players and starting fights, now seemed to be on his best behavior, likely because he was worried about all the death threats he'd received, and if he tried any funny business it wouldn't end well for him. Even Guillermo Stabile, the top scorer, missed a shot. And after this happened, Uruguay began their own attack, passing between several players, before José Sea scored Uruguay's second goal, making the score even. Then, around the 68th minute, Uruguayan defender Ernesto Mascheroni stole the ball from Francisco Barallo, passed to another, Victoriano Iriarte, who then scored Uruguay's third goal, giving Uruguay the lead. And Argentina missed yet another chance to score, and in the last few moments of the match, Héctor Castro scored Uruguay's fourth goal, sealing the victory. Referee John Langenus blew the final whistle to signal the end of the game and wasted no time going to his prepared ship and sailing far, far away from Montevideo. The Uruguayan team celebrated. Players fell into each other's arms, and the FIFA World Cup had successfully finished its first ever tournament, capturing the hearts and minds of everyone and establishing one of the greatest traditions in sporting history.